NFL MVP Patrick Mahomes leads Kansas City's Chiefs to a 38-35 win over the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 57. And after years away from the stage, Rihanna was rocking the mic at the Super Bowl halftime, and she gave a nod to her own Fenty Beauty when she took a moment and powdered her nose. Some folks didn't quite get that, but that was a brilliant PR move by a boss lady who is known not only for her music, but also for her beauty brand, the beauty brand, which actually made her a billionaire. That's yes, a billionaire. 3 unidentified objects shot down since Friday pose a threat to civilian air traffic, according to U.S. intelligence agencies. Agents, the College Board is hitting back, saying it regrets that it even engaged in conversations with the Florida Department of Education and accuses Ron DeSantis of defaming them. They say that they did not make changes to AP Black Studies courses because of their interactions with the Florida governor. And in a new report, the United States says that the richest Black mothers and their babies are twice as likely to die as the richest white mothers and their babies. So it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you are Black, you still experience racism in our medical system, so much so that Black mothers and Black babies are dying at disproportionate rates when compared to their white peers. We are recognizing women who will have their faces on the quarter this year, including the first Afro-Latina, Miss Celia Cruz, who will be on the U.S. quarter. She's a Cuban singer known as the Queen of Salsa, and one of my favorites, writer, lawyer, and activist Pauline Murray will also be on the U.S. quarter. Some folks are asking, what happened to Harriet Tubman on that $20 bill? Well, the U.S. Finance Department says that that's still going to happen, but not as quickly as some of us had hoped. And we are still watching the death toll rise in Syria and Turkey as that 7.8 earthquake that hit last Monday has just taken the lives of over 35,000 people. So proud that rescue teams from right here in Los Angeles have been deployed to participate in the humanitarian efforts that are taking place to help find victims of that horrific earthquake. Again, our prayers and thoughts are with those families. When we come forward, we're going to talk about a very, very tough subject, very tough, but very real subject. And this is Areva Martin in real time, and we try to keep it real. So even though this is a tough subject, it's one that impacts African Americans, and it's one that we have an obligation to talk about, and it's suicide rates. And there's a CDC report out that says that suicide amongst African Americans, yes, amongst Black people, is up by 20%. In my big interview, I'm going to talk with Chesley, Chris's mom. It's been this is the 1 year, almost 1 year anniversary, or a little over 1 year and 2 weeks actually, anniversary of death by suicide. Her daughter, beautiful Chesley, Miss USA 2019, died by suicide. We're going to talk to her mom, who's become an incredible mental health advocate. And we're going to talk to Dr. Patrice Douglas. She's going to help us identify warning signs and talk to us about what is causing this incredible increase in suicide amongst African Americans. All of today's trending news, analysis, and unfiltered opinions right here on Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward. You are listening to Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. In my second hour, I am taking your calls. I want to hear from you. If you have a question or a comment, give us a call at 1-800-920-1580. Again, that's 1-800-920-1580, or post a comment on YouTube and we will answer your question. In this hour, we are talking about suicide rates. We're talking about mental health. And I'm joined by someone who has become a friend who I've had an opportunity to interview on multiple occasions. And I identify with her so much because she is a mother of several daughters, and I'm the mother of a couple of daughters. And she is such a brave soul. I'm always just so inspired by her courage. I'm talking about April Simpkins. April is the mother of Chesley Chris, and you all will remember the beautiful Chesley. She was a lawyer. She was an entertainment correspondent. She was a brilliant professional, and she was Miss USA 2019. And about a year and 2 weeks ago, she died by suicide. And I was reading just the most beautiful tribute that April wrote about her daughter. She posted this on January 30th, saying the pain that she experienced. I just want to read a little of it because it was so beautiful. It just resonated with me. And this is in the words of April. A year ago, the day started off like any other. I had no idea that would be your first day in heaven. I've missed you every day, baby girl, every day. Thank you for being with me in some of my loneliest moments, for bringing me so many amazing and wonderful people into my life. Thank you for living a life so full of good deeds that not even death can slow down the trajectory of your works. Your legacy will continue. There are many of us who will see to that. Those are the beautiful words of April Simpkins, written about her daughter, Chesley. Thank you so much, April, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I'm also joined today by Dr. Patrice Douglas. She is a mental health professional. She knows all too well about suicide in the African-American community. And I'm so grateful to have her here to help us make sense of these horrific CDC numbers. Thank you so much, Dr. Douglas, for joining us as well.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
April, I want to start with you as a mother. And, you know, you and I have been in this conversation before, and I guess I keep thinking when these numbers come out that there's going to be some good news. But not only is it the CDC report that came out that talked about 20% increase in suicide amongst African Americans, I saw another study today that said that as a result of the pandemic, that it's taken a harsh toll on teen girls' mental health, and that 60% of these teen girls are reporting feelings of persistent sadness or hopelessness, and that many of these girls have thought about, as many as 30% said they have seriously considered attempting suicide. And when you hear those numbers, you know, how does it just make you feel, given that you as a mom have experienced the unthinkable loss of a child by suicide?
There's so much sadness. Yeah, as you read those words, it brought back to me the words that Chesley left in her suicide text to me. And those, Areva, were her words. She said, when she wrote this note to me, I love you, Mom. You're my best friend, the person I've lived for years. I wish I could stay with you, but I cannot bear the crushing weight of persistent sadness, hopelessness, and loneliness any longer. I've never told you these feelings because I've never wanted you to worry, and because I hoped they would eventually change, but I know they never will. When you said that, it just honestly, it took my mind right back to her exact words. That she had been feeling those things, that she felt she lost her sense of purpose. As amazing as she was, in the aftermath of Chesley's passing, just from comments I would hear, things I would see posted, it really said to me, there's so much that we don't understand. There's so many assumptions that we make when we tend to tackle this from those assumptions. And I've also learned that depression is not a monolith. It looks different or it's triggered by different things in different people. And so I am always quick when I speak to talk about, Chesley and what she was dealing with, but there is such a host of things that our young people are dealing with on a regular basis that it's truly disheartening.
Yeah, I love, April, that you are always so clear about the fact that depression is not a monolith, because I think when people think of people who are depressed, they think of people who can't get out of the bed. They think of people who don't change their clothes, who don't shower, who maybe stop eating or maybe start eating compulsively. And it's hard for people. And I remember a year and 2 weeks ago when I heard about your daughter's death, it was hard for me to wrap my brains around it because I saw her, it's like a young me. Here she was. Well, she had a degree I don't even have. She had a JD MBA. I have a JD, but she was a lawyer and she was a correspondent. She was a journalist. She was a TV personality. And for those of us on the outside, she had everything. Drop dead gorgeous, so successful in such a short period of time in her life. 29 years, had accomplished more than people in their 50s or some people in their entire lives. So it was hard for us to understand, how can somebody so beautiful and so successful in the way we saw them be so sad? And you have always been so honest about helping dispel the myth that your daughter wore a mask. She smiled on the red carpet because that was her job. Do you think people are getting that, April? I know you've spent the last 6 months, if not more, on TV, on radio, trying to get that message across. Do you think people are getting it?
I do think so. One thing that I learned in this journey is how many people identified immediately with high functioning depression and anxiety, almost didn't know what that was, but sent me messages like, that's me, I'm her, that's me, I'm her. I do these things, I have this, I've accomplished all these things, and still I'm battling this. And I had the opportunity to talk with Dan Gillison, who's the CEO of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we talked about this very thing, and he talked about this being such a trait of the type A. And I see that as a type A, that is who we are, but that doesn't make us immune from mental illness. It just means that we're powered through so much. Other people may not see it. And I want people who are battling that battle to not be afraid to come out of the darkness and say, I'm struggling, or I'm battling, or I'm not okay. And those of us receiving that are able to point them to resources or offer support or kindness.
Dr. Douglas, do you think we're doing enough in this country? Clearly, we're having more discussions about mental health because high-profile people, whether it's Simone Biles, other athletes, entertainers, are talking about mental health. But this concept of being super successful yet struggling with mental health issues, do you think that conversation is happening enough in circles where it matters?
I definitely think that the conversation is occurring a lot more these days. With the pandemic, it did create a lot of awareness of how fragile our mental health is. And so as we're coming out of the pandemic, as they say, and we're trying to get back to this busy routine, we're realizing that we really don't have the capacity to do that. And we really don't know where to turn because we do have to be stable. We do have to survive. And so while the conversations are happening, the solutions to these issues are still, to be determined on how we can really be effective in helping everyone with their mental health with the shortages that we have in the healthcare system.
But I'm struck by the numbers, the CDC number, 20% increase in suicide amongst Black people. Now, I think before the show started, you told me that suicide is up amongst all people. So we're not the only demographic that's been impacted, but 20%. And I can remember a time when people would say things, and I know, April, you and I are about the same age. We can remember when people said, well, Black people didn't kill themselves. Black people didn't commit suicide. You know, that was kind of this wives' tale, this urban myth that somehow we were immune, that was something that white people did. So when we hear this 20% number, Dr. Douglas, what unpack that for us? What's happening with Black folks in particular?
Well, to start with, that is a myth because suicide ideation and suicidal deaths have been around since slavery days because we were used as medical experiments. The slaves would pray that they wouldn't even make it to the summer because that's when they primarily would use us for reproductive experiments or other things. So it's been around for a while. We don't talk about it, but it's been around for generations. And a lot of it is the fatigue of, I'm not feeling very well. I'm not mentally strong. As we know, when we hear about the stories from, previous generations, what got them through tough times was their faith, their determination, and their strength in their mind. So when you are trying to keep up with the same mentality and the same strength as, your loved ones or previous generations, you're realizing that you don't have that capacity necessarily, and you're starting to feel weak. You're starting to feel like you are not as a strong person as you should be as a Black American. And so you start to wonder if your life is even worth it. On top of that, when we do talk about our problems, people don't really seem to think that it's a thing. There's research that shows that medical providers often misdiagnose Black Americans because they don't even believe we experience depression because we're not running around crying and, looking sad. And so even when we do go seek help, they're not even getting it right. So these are the reasons why we struggle as a people to talk to people, to identify that we're struggling, and to find solutions to help those issues.
Yeah, I'm taking your calls at 1-800-920-1580. If you know someone that's struggling with depression or you think has a mental health issue and they're not talking about it, they're not seeking help, give us a call. We want to hear from you. April, one of the things that strikes me is kind of generational differences. So, we grew up in this generation where you didn't talk a lot about your problems and you just you toughened up. If something was going on, you just had to stand up to your adversity. You had to figure out a way to overcome it. And if you did talk about it, you maybe were characterized as a whiner, as a complainer, as ungrateful even. But younger people, my daughters in particular, and my daughters are around the age of your kids, your older kids, I know you have some younger kids too, but they are more comfortable going to therapy, talking about the need to protect their mental health. Was that a conversation that you had in your household, and how did you navigate that between teaching kids to be tough, right? Preparing them for the harshness of the world, but also teaching them to be in touch with their feelings and not being afraid to say that they were overwhelmed or that they needed help?
Sure. In our household, my husband and I, David is my second husband, we started going to counseling before we were married, mostly because we thought we're coming from different worlds. I brought in family, he had never been married, didn't have any children. We wanted to understand how to navigate, and we were very open with the children. So we've always talked about the importance of counselors and what counselors can provide. One of the challenges, in my opinion, that younger children have, my children included, is finding safe spaces. And so we don't talk to our children about being tough. We actually tell our children, show your emotions. It's okay, especially in our house. It's okay. Let's talk through it. What are you feeling? That's just common language for us. But by the same token, we talk to our children about using that language and being that vulnerable in a safe place. And if school isn't a safe place for you, or if the school bus isn't a safe place for you, then come home to that safe space and let's talk about it. There are less and less safe spaces now for children. Now that we have social media and 24-hour television, there is no safety. We had safety. If you had a bully at school, you went home, the bully was at school. If somebody said something mean, it was in a note that eventually made it into the trash can.
They maybe had to put a stamp on it and mail it to you.
Exactly. But our children don't have that. The bully follows them home right into their closed, safe space. The bully can talk to every single person and it's there forever. It's a whole different place for our children.
So Dr. Douglas, you hear April saying, she has this very enlightened family. Her and her husband sat down, they went to counseling, they talked to their kids about these issues. Is that common in most African-American families where parents are being that open about counseling and mental health issues? Because that doesn't sound like what happens in a lot of those families that I know. So I just want to know, in your practice, do you see a lot of Black families being as open and transparent as April and her husband are?
I think it's maybe 50-50, maybe a little bit more on the side of no, right? I don't think it's that the conversations are not happening in the families, it's the response that makes a difference, right? So if a child say like, I had a hard day at work, or a hard day at school, oh, you don't know nothing about hard. I have to do this, I have to do that. So I don't think that it's that parents are not checking in. I think it's the response of how are they supporting. They're kind of comparing their day to their child, or like April said, children today, their school environment is way different than all of us have experienced with social media and things like that. So, if a child does come to you and say like, I'm depressed, oh, I'll give you something to be depressed about, go do the dishes. That's not really something that really helps you feel like you can have a safe space to talk to your parents or they'll understand you. So I would say we're having the conversations, but they're not always that great.
But we as parents are screwing it up, is kind of what you're saying. And I'm going to just raise my hand to say I had that very same experience with my daughter, my oldest daughter. She's in business school at Columbia University, and she called me and was telling me about feeling like she had experienced microaggressions. She was feeling isolated. She had a lot of issues with some of the white students. And I immediately went to solutions, how she could solve it, what she could do. And she said to me, Mom, I don't really need your Areva-isms, your solutions to every problem. I just need you to listen. And boy, that was like a gut punch. I didn't sleep all night. At 5 a.m, I'm texting her and my other daughter who's in law school at Columbia, this long message apologizing, telling them how I grew up and how hard it was and how I was pushed and told, just suck it up and work harder and be better. And, all the stuff that Black people over 40 were told by their parents. And that I had to unlearn some of that so that I could listen more and not be so just jump to the solution oriented. But that was how I was raised, by these strong Black women. And I said, I don't fault them because they were raised by, strong Black women too. And they had to overcome a lot of adversity. And that is a real challenge. And help us, Dr. Douglas, give us some tips as parents on how do we, not so quickly want to gloss over those feelings that we were told to gloss over, and to be able to listen and be present while at the same time offering some suggestions. I think that's where a lot of us who want to be there for our kids get perhaps kind of off track and maybe mess things up.
I think as parents, it's your, responsibility and your love language to support and fix the kid's boo-boo, right? If they're having a bad day or somebody was picking them at the playground, you want to go, talk to the bully themselves. And so I don't think that parents often feel like they can just listen. They always have to listen and find something to make their child feel better. So ask your child, like, do you want me to just listen? Do you want me to give input? Ask, because one thing we know about, young people, they'll tell you what they want. A lot of times they want to come to you because they want you to be that safe space that their friends can't give them. But if you're going to tell them about your life story and how, you struggle, but you figured it out.
How we walked a mile in school.
Yes,
school
like that's.
Hold that thought for me, Dr. Douglas. We got to take some news, sports, and traffic. But when we come forward, more on mental health in the African-American community right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Elected. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said they were shot down in remote, difficult to reach areas. A man driving a speeding U-Haul truck through the streets of New York City this morning is responsible for injuring at least 8 people. The suspect is in custody, but it's not yet clear what sparked the rampage. NYPD officials say there's no indication that terrorism is involved. Americans expect inflation to hold steady. The New York Federal Reserve's latest survey of consumer expectations found Americans in January expected inflation a year from now to stay at 5%. The expected level of inflation 3 years from now stood at 2.7%, a slight decrease from the expectation in December. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Island from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Still have trouble in Silver Lake on the 101 northbound before Silver Lake Boulevard, trying to clear that crash from the right lane. Got a big rig that hit a car and it is stopped coming away from the 5. It's now a SIG alert in Ontario, 10 eastbound before Archibald Avenue. Big rig is blocking the right lane. You're hitting the brakes from Vineyard Avenue. And in Santa Ana, 55 northbound at Dyer Road. That earlier wreck just cleared from the lanes there.
Hi, I'm Kyle. My company is Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 to provide custom blinds, shades, and shutters at affordable prices. Our blinds are easy to install and shipping is free. Don't hire an expensive professional. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers are back in action tonight in Portland. LeBron James is questionable with a sore left ankle. LeBron has not played since becoming the NBA's all-time scoring leader last Tuesday. The Lakers are 5 games below 500, but only 2 games away from qualifying for the NBA play-in round. The top 5 teams in this week's AP men's college basketball rankings: Alabama, Houston, Purdue, UCLA, and Kansas. First time for UCLA in the top 5 since January 31st, 2022. The Bruins have been in the top 10 for 7 straight weeks. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by Original Taco Pete.
Aaron at Original Taco Pete's. Come in today for our tasty seasoned black taco. We're at 3272 West Slauson off Crenshaw, or call 323-348-4441.
Hi, this is Tavis.
Tavis, this is Dr. K. We've got a lot to talk about. I'll be in town on the 28th of February. Can you clear your calendar?
Absolutely, Dr. King. Good Lord, do I have some questions for you, sir. Hi, it's Tavis.
Assalamu alaikum, my brother. This is Minister Malcolm. Now, I heard that you and Martin are getting together for a public dialogue on February 28th. You see, now I already know the date. I know y'all not trying to keep me out of that conversation, are you?
No, sir. No, sir.
What happened to George Floyd shouldn't happen, not even to a dog. How long must the Negro continue to endure this foolishness at the hands of law enforcement? People can take but so much before they reach a breaking point. What do you mean, Black Lives Matter? Black lives haven't mattered in this country since Negroes stopped working for free at the end of slavery. You ought to be talking about Black Guns Matter and start your own NRA. Call it the Negro Revolutionary Amalgamation.
Don't miss this compelling historic radio event, The Return. When Tavis Smiley converses with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. Tuesday, February 28th, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Areva Martin, and I'm the host of the new drive time show, Areva Martin in Real Time, on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm also a mother and a child advocate. And when my son Marty was diagnosed with autism, I was devastated. I knew I had to do something. So I started the Special Needs Network. And for over 15 years, we have been helping families with children with autism. Now, through a new program called CORE, we can help you. We can help you take your career to the next level by training you to become an early childhood interventionist, working with children ages 0 to 3. The CORE program will pay you $25 an hour while you are in training, pay off $10,000 of your student loan debt, and help you find a good paying job. Call 323-291-7100 or visit snnla.org to learn how you can become a CORE fellow and take your career to the next level. Don't hesitate. Apply today.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a whole lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. Today, I was able to speak with Ola Wadibia, VP of Women on the Move. Hi, Ola. Tell me a bit about this initiative by JP Morgan Chase, founded in 2013.
Women on the Move is a center of excellence at JP Morgan Chase in our global DEI organization, where we really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's really awesome about Chase's approach is that all of our centers of excellence, and there are 7 of them, focus on different demographic groups, is that we're really focusing on what's happening internally in the firm and also what's happening out in community. So really, Women on the Move is really focused on thinking about how do we help advance women professionally and personally.
I love it. So tell me about this beautifully updated banking branch here on Crenshaw.
That was really important. A part of our racial equity commitment was to build in place for Chase. So being able to revamp this beautiful space, to be able to welcome community members, today, anyone, nonprofit, organization, school can actually do events in our community center that we're sitting in here for free. Yes, people come inside, grab a coffee, use the Wi-Fi. It's free.
Yes, Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
Our Weekly Los Angeles is the largest audited Black newspaper in the state of California, with a distribution of over 50,000 copies weekly. Pick up a copy every Thursday to get the latest news on African American communities of LA. You can also keep up with what's going on in Los Angeles and surrounding cities by going to www.ourweekly.com. The Our Weekly website is updated daily with the current news about us and for us. For your advertising needs, Our Weekly offers economical advertising packages to fit your budget. Feel free to call Our Weekly Los Angeles at 323-905-1300 or visit the website at www.ourweekly.com. Our Weekly Los Angeles, reporting news that matters to you.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time.
We are talking about the African American community and mental health issues. Some startling reports out. One report said that amongst girls, that 30% seriously considered attempting suicide and double that rate amongst boys. Another report out by the CDC says suicide rates are up 20% amongst African Americans. I'm joined by April Simpkins. She is a mental health advocate. She is the mother of Chesley Chris, Miss USA 2019, who died by suicide about 1 year and 2 weeks ago. And I'm joined by Dr. Patrice Douglas, who is a mental health professional. And we're talking about generational differences and how different generations may approach mental health. And I know, Dr. Douglas, you said that parents need to ask their kids, is this one of these conversations where I should be listening exclusively? Or should I be trying to help problem solve? How difficult is that for you, April? Are you able to just be that listening mom and not be that, let me jump in and solve the problem mom?
It takes so much practice. Interestingly enough, my husband and I use that language when we talk to each other. He will say, or I will say, hey, I just need to vent. And that means he just needs to say something, or, hey, I'm struggling with something. And I think our children pick that up from us. And we do give them room to vent. And even if they want to vent about me to me, that's fine. And I will listen. And so what we try to do is teach them how to do that in a healthy way and to not keep things pent up inside. I think it's interesting, we were talking before about, kind of quieting that down when our children come to us. We are so busy with solutions, and it hurts to see your child hurt or struggling, especially if you feel like you have that answer. And one thing I did learn to do with Chesley, because I knew for years that she was battling with depression, was to give everything she said its own space. Whether she was talking to me about a legal brief she was nervous or studying, or a question on stage at pageant, I gave it the same weight because if it mattered to her in that moment, then it was important and I needed to listen, not just hear her, but really just listen. And so we kind of practice that with our other children, just learning how to listen.
Yeah, I love your honesty about how difficult it is and how you have to practice. And I'm at that point where I'm trying to recognize the generational differences and the need to listen, because I don't know if I ever really told my mother and grandmother growing up that I felt sad or felt lonely or whatever feelings I had. And I'm sure if I did, they probably told me, get over it. You know, again, I love them to death. They're deceased and they didn't mean any harm, but that's how they were taught. And we repeat what we learn as kids, and you know, we become our parents in many ways. Dr. Douglas, help us understand some of the warning signs, because Chesley, again, for many was the picture of perfection, had everything going for her, but we know there are warning signs. And oftentimes when I have this conversation with parents or loved ones, what they feel is a lot of guilt because they say they didn't see the warning signs, they didn't pay attention to them. What are some of the warning signs that someone might be in a mental health crisis where they need professional help and they might be really thinking about suicide?
So what's really interesting about the warning signs, right? Because it's like a checklist of things you should keep, be aware of. But really, when we look at people's lives, it doesn't look like a checklist. And so it is very easy to miss. But also, too, we as a society has been, really good about hiding things, right? And so a lot of times people really don't want you to know what the problem is or that they're suffering. So they will appear as normal. And so I think a lot of that too is that we do have to give each other grace, that it's not that we necessarily don't care or that we're not paying attention, is that they often make sure that we don't pay attention. So some of the things that we should look at as far as a Black community, because some of that checklist, it works, but some of that stuff doesn't apply to us. So if you're noticing that you rather hang out by yourself than go places, if you're recognizing that you are starting to think about what would life be like if you weren't here anymore, and that nobody would miss you or nobody would even notice, that's pretty much not true. And that is a warning sign. If you're starting to lose focus, or even in your relationships, you're not as intimate as often. Or in Black individuals, we often see our emotion as far as anger and irritation being a really big sign that if you don't even know where it's coming from, but you feel it every single day, your moods may be low. And that's kind of the concern with the Black community, is that by the time we're at that place, we're in a crisis. So we don't even recognize that there was baby steps or different steps that were taking place that showed signs of depression. But because we were trying to ignore it or try to push forward, by the time that it gets to a place where it's a crisis, it's like you better do something fast and you better do something quick, which a lot of the resources that we have are not really crisis centered. They're more of long-term. So that is some of the things that we see in Black community, as well as all of us pretty much have high functioning depression, because when you look at other communities, we mask it so well. And so it's really hard to tell if somebody's going to work and they're cooking, but by the time they get home, they don't get off the couch, and it's hard to peel themselves to go to bed, that's a sign of depression. So it's really about just having that communication of how are you feeling today, instead of how are you doing, because we can easily just say fine, but how are you feeling? How's your body feeling? Checking in to those things can really help you identify if somebody is doing well or they're not.
And I know, April, you talked about being in therapy, and what Dr. Douglas says is some of the solutions are long-term. They're not quick fixes. And I've heard a lot of people say that they don't believe in therapy. Particularly, I've heard Black men say, I don't want to go tell my problems to some white person or some woman or just anyone. And if they do go, they're expecting the therapist to give them solutions. And that doesn't happen in most therapy sessions. So how did you get okay with and comfortable with going to therapy, and particularly going for, I remember you telling me, for a long period of time?
Oh, absolutely. And it honestly is probably something I consider to be part of my this life strategy, is working with a therapist. I have heard that from other people, from relatives of mine who say, I don't need that, I don't need all of that, I'm good, I pray on it, you should pray more, just take a vacation. I hear all of these other solutions because I do think that there's a misunderstanding of what that counselor is doing for me. And, you know, sometimes she's catching my blind spot. I won't even realize I'm doing something repetitively until she says, hey, you know what I'm noticing is each time this happens, you take this path and let's talk about that. People who are close to me know that I see my counselor. And someone who's really close to me who I work with will say things like this to me when I'm at work, and she's a safe space for me. She'll say, April, I notice when you continue to clear your calendar of things, you fill it up again. Why are you doing that? And I said to her, I don't even realize I'm doing that. And her words to me were, that's maybe something that you can write down and talk with your counselor about. Hey, that to me is a safe space, and that is people realizing that I'm benefiting from this. And
that's a serious accountability partner, April.
100%. My husband.
She's like, girl, you need to talk to your therapist
Yes.
about that. I
Yes,
love
because
that.
people in my safe space know I can't see my 6 o'clock. I can't see my blind spots. I may be doing things that I'm not realizing I'm doing it.
Wow.
And so when I talk to others about mental health and safe spaces, everybody isn't your safe space. You need to know who really has your back, who you really can confide in without judgment, without feeling like they're criticizing or shaming you, but they listen and support you.
Amen to that. Definitely, everybody is not your safe space. When we come forward, religion, Black folks, and mental health, right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Force agrees to extend its work to 2024. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. The California Task Force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans in California decided at the two-day meeting on campus of San Diego State that it would support legislation that extends the panel until July of next year. An 8-0 vote with 1 abstention is what moved the date that was previously set for the summer of this year. The goal now is to have ample time to satisfactorily implement an action plan based on the findings of its final report, which is due in 5 months. This decision was made 4 months after Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed legislation asking for a 12-month extension. I'm Maisha Cairo, and that's your K-Black Minute News.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
Thanks to our new sponsor, Lendistry. Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered in Los Angeles. Lendistry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lendistry, LENDISTRY.com/KBLA today.
KBLA Talk 1580 would like to thank all of the businesses that tune into KBLA at work. We celebrate you, your calls to the station, and your overall support. To show our appreciation, we would like to treat your office to lunch for 10, sponsored by John O'Groats family-owned restaurant and johnogroats.us. Open the KBLA Talk 1580 app or log on to KBLA1580.com to submit your office to be selected for our Office of the Week. We know you're just like our staff, putting in many hard, smart working hours per week. We just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you. You and your staff deserve lunch on us. Enter your office to win lunch for 10 and be highlighted on KBLA Talk 1580 as our Office of the Week. Open the KBLA app or log on to KBLA1580.com to enter your office today to become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. Sponsored by John O'Groats family-owned restaurant and johnogroats.us. Become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action.
Are you a business owner, freelancer, or filing taxes for the first time? Are you tired of dodging the IRS? Stop what you're doing now. Mac Tax Solutions, the father and son dynamic duo tax team, is the most sought out tax business around. Mac Tax Solutions guarantees 100% maximum refund and free consultation. Call now, 562-715-9945. That's 562-715-9945, or visit MacTaxSolutions.com. IRS or California FTB notices. Free e-file remote tax services with free secure tax dome portal. A $40 gift card will be included when you file. Call now, 562-715-9945. 562-715-9945. Staying on track with all required documents will help you reach your personal and financial goals. Prevent paycheck garnishments. Mac Tax Solutions will even provide all tax programs that your business could be eligible for. Now is the time to make your business work for you. Call now, 562-715-9945. Be sure to download the KBLA app. Tell all your friends and families it's time for a fresh tax start. Call now, 562-715-9945, or visit the website at MacTaxSolutions.com. Call now, 562-715-9945.
This is Areva Martin in real time, and this is Areva Martin, your host, and we're tracking some startling news today from the CDC. That's the Center for Disease Control, and they're out with a new report that says suicide rates amongst African Americans up by 20%. And in fact, that same report says that whites are the only demographic where they've seen an actual decline in suicide rates. Dr. Patrice Douglas is joining us, as well as April Simpkins. April is a mental health advocate, and Dr. Douglas is a mental health professional. Dr. Douglas, why the difference in the suicide rates amongst Blacks and whites, where whites have seen a decline in suicide rates over the last several years, where African Americans and other minority groups, including Native Americans and Latinos, have seen an uptick in suicide rates?
Definitely think it has to do with the oppression, the systematic racism. I mean, every single day we are finding some type of news out there that one of us have been killed, whether it's due to police injustices in our neighborhoods. And so when you have these dynamics going on, you don't even have to necessarily be personally impacted, but the vicarious trauma of just hearing about how our lives don't matter, you know, can be depressing enough. And so when we continue to see an increase in the unfairness and the injustices of Black people, it does make sense as to how our depression is going up, as well as our hopelessness, as well as the areas of ages and genders that we normally don't see a lot of data in, they're increasing as well. It's not surprising that they're capturing that we are dying by suicide at alarming rates.
April, I know you and Chesley talked a lot about her sadness, her depression. I know she had been in therapy for a while. I know from interviews before that she had actually tried to commit suicide even before a year ago. But did she ever talk about what Dr. Douglas just identified, that kind of community trauma, being a young woman who had to perhaps report on or be a part of news stories that involved unarmed African-American men and women who were killed by police, or just some of the community violence that we see? Did she ever talk about those things as being impactful in terms of how she felt?
You know, she didn't talk about those things specifically as something greatly impacting her, but I'll tell you some of the things she did talk about. She talked about colorism amongst the Black people. When she became Miss USA, 2019, the news flashed that there were now 3 Black women who held these major titles. It was Chesley and Haley Garris for Miss Teen USA, and Nia Franklin, her friend, who was also Miss America. And so many comments came through telling Chesley she was not Black because she's biracial. There was only one Black winner, the other 2 are just, you know, just that hurt her. And traumatized her. For Chesley, she was a Black woman. She was a proud, advocating Black woman. when she would speak out as Miss USA on a number of topics. She did march in Black Lives Matter, marches after George Floyd's murder, and the number of people who were almost trying to put her back in her place. And you wear that crown, you say that those are the things that would bother her, that would strike her, that feeling of helplessness. I'm not just this, I am more than that. And I do think that that is also a challenge for us in the Black community, is constantly being put in our place if we try to rise to certain levels or step into conversations. And especially if you're someone on that high functioning spectrum, to be stymied and stifled that way is going to impact your mental health.
Oh, such a great point. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Douglas, do you see that in your practice? I guess that's Black on Black bullying and attacks. And, you know, this has come up in the issue of Tyre Nichols, these 5 Black officers who we watch brutalize Tyre Nichols. Lots of Black folks having that conversation about what does it mean that they're not white officers that killed Tyre Nichols, and you know, not sure how to feel about that. And so April raises the issue of Black folks attacking her daughter because she wasn't quote unquote Black enough. And we know that even if both of her parents were Black, if you talk a different way, right? You have a different dialect. If you live in a suburban neighborhood, if you dress in certain clothes, my daughter, who, you know, I'm Black, my husband's Black, she's at an all-white institution, and she's told me some of the comments her Black friends have made about her because, I don't know, because she's my daughter, I guess, whatever. But do you see that a lot, Dr. Douglas, where Black folks are causing the pain and distraught of other Black people?
Absolutely. And I think it's because we, you know, expect that we all come from the same community. We all kind of look at like each other's, you know, the skin folk. We're supposed to be kin folk and we're not, because we all have our different issues and ideologies about, you know, what is Black and what isn't. And so there is a big portion of our depression, if not even feel like we fit in our own community. And then when we try to rise and do things to bring us to places that, you know, maybe didn't welcome us before, you know, we're sellouts. And so, yeah, there's just so many layers as to how we feel about ourselves and who we can trust and who we feel supported by. We always look for validation in the Black community, even as Black people. And it's always not met with, you know, the best positivity. And so she's absolutely right. You got the outside and you got the inside pretty much stressing you out all at the same time.
Wow. Yeah. I just first of all want to thank both of you ladies. We are out of time. This is a conversation we could have for many, many more hours. I got to ask you real quickly before I let you go, Dr. Douglas. April brought it up. Somebody told her, girl, you're not praying enough. We know religion plays a big role in how we think about and talk about mental health in the Black community. Give me like 30 seconds about how we should be thinking about religion as it relates to seeking professional mental health.
Take your religion to therapy. There are plenty of providers that offer Christian, Muslim faith-based interventions where they can incorporate those things into the interventions. You know, religion never just stops at the church. It can come into the therapy room. So take it with you and do both at the same time. It doesn't hurt to pray and talk to someone. So combine them. It's the best thing ever.
Wow, that's a really good response to that. And I know so many of us grew up in communities where we were told that if we just prayed hard enough, you know, we would do better, right? It wasn't about professional help. It was about our love of Jesus or lack thereof. And, you know, we weren't saved enough that if we stopped sinning, you know, we could sleep at night. So many urban myths, so many urban tales out there. So just want to, again, thank you, April, for always being, you know, so honest, so transparent about something so personal, so tragic. You just carry so much grace. And I just love you for that. And Dr. Douglas, thank you for sharing your insights with us today. Again, Areva Martin in real time. I'll be back tomorrow with trending news, expert analysis, and unfiltered opinion. The next voice so that you hear will be that of Les Brown. He will be motivating you on You Got to Be Hungry. He's with us all month, the month of February, in a radio residency right here on KBLA Talk 1580. If you want to continue this conversation with me, follow me on all social media platforms at Areva Martin. And don't forget to download the KBLA app. You can listen and watch all of our shows all over the globe. The next voice that you hear will be Les Brown after some news, traffic, and sports. KBLA Talk 1580.